Hello, my name is Emily, and we are going into a kidney dissection today for a pig. And we're going to look at some of the exterior anatomy before I get into what's going on the inside. So, this nice border and covering that we have on the kidney itself, that would be our renal capsule. And once you have dissected it and are looking at our piece from a more internal view, you can actually see that really finite border when you're looking very closely. So we have, as I was saying, we have our renal capsule, just this exterior that we're seeing. And I apologize, I did lose my wooden stick to do some pointing out, so I'm going to use one of our pins. So when I'm looking at the superior area here, all the way to this inferior area to that superior area that I pointed out, that would be what is called a hilus or a helix. I'm not very sure of how to say that, but it's almost like a divot. And in that little divot and in that cave, when we look at the kidney, we're going to see some more parts of it that we can point out. So it looks a little squished just because it's been vacuum sealed, but when I am looking at this opening in this point here, what we are seeing is actually our renal artery. That's our renal artery, that opening that we see there. It's a little squished and a little bunched compared to when we are seeing the organs picture or focus in the textbook. And then right next to it, and what looks like this next little slit or next little divot, that is just a mashed down opening to the renal vein. And then superior to these two structures, where you see this little opening here that I'm pointing at with the pinpoint, that is going to be the opening to our ureter, which is going to be superior to all of these nice little structures that we had below that we have given names to. And then when we are looking at the superior border of that ureter, what we are looking at is the renal sinus. So that's that renal sinus. And then we're going to go in and take a look at some of those interior structures to finish off our dissection. Okay, we're having an interior look at this beautiful kidney that we have. So I'd say from the border of the renal capsule, when we're looking interiorly, until we almost see this a little bit of a darker border, what we're looking at in this area is what we would refer to as the renal cortex. Now, what is lying perpendicular, if we're looking at this from a longitudinal side, would be our renal medulla when we're looking apart from that renal cortex that we just looked at. Taking a look in the middle or the center, we are looking at our renal cortex for this specimen. And then what we're also looking for, we'll take a look at shortly after I've done a little more review. All right, taking a more interior look at our kidney, we have our renal pelvis more towards the center. That renal pelvis is going to be closer to the renal artery that we saw exteriorly, as well as the renal vein. And then when we're taking a look at the calyx, If we're looking at the major calyx, it's going to be over on this side. And then our minor calyx is going to be over here in this area. And then we have our renal column that we're taking a look at. And just to ensure it was kind of an anchor point for me, we have our renal pelvis, which was able to help me look at a lot of things.